welcome to this week's Booming Encore's Trending Topics Talk. Today I'm joined by Joe Casey, who is the Managing Partner and Retirement Coach at Retirement Wisdom, and Eileen Williams, who's an author and career expert from Feisty Side of 50. Welcome to you both.
Hi, thank you.
So let's just jump right into it. There were a couple topics that I thought were kind of interesting this week. First topic up, there was an article published in Business Insider that shared some new research that people who feel younger than their age may actually have healthier brains. Now, this was a relatively small study, only like 68 people participated in it, but it does raise the question, how much do you think about being old actually makes you old? Eileen, you want to start?
Oh, yes, because they say a river, denial is only a river in Egypt. I've been floating down that river for quite a while. If you ask me how old I am now, if I would immediately answer, I'd say in my mid-30s. Then I realize, my daughter's in her early 40s, so there's a disconnect there. But I do think the younger you feel, the more open you are to new experiences, the more you greet each day with enthusiasm and fun. And I do know your brain really thrives on new experiences. So I think there's a whole host of things that go into feeling young about yourself. So, let's stay in denial as long as we can is what I think.
Absolutely. Joe, what do you think?
I think the mindset matters quite a bit. And it's one of those things that we have control over. And it impacts so many other things, as Eileen mentioned. It can really determine how active you are, both physically and mentally. And I think that drives a lot of other ancillary benefits. So I think it all starts with mindset, your outlook. And you can see it in people that we all know and interact with, the difference. You can see it instantly.
I truly agree. I think age is truly a number, and often it can be such a limiting thing because we put things like, at age 50, women aren't supposed to have longer hair, or, it's silly things like this, but they are still limiting thoughts that actually enter into your psyche. And I think by putting an age attached to something, we do often limit ourselves. So, myself, I'm with you, Eileen, I'm stuck at 35 and I'm planning on staying there. I often joke I'm doing the Benjamin Button route of life. I could get up and now I'm coming back down the other side. So that's what I'm thinking about aging, and I'm going to try and at least embrace that as long as I can without hitting the really young stage. Don't want to go necessarily quite that far.
Because I no longer celebrate birthdays. I celebrate the anniversary of my 30th birthday.
Yeah, there you go. That's a great idea. What thing to embrace. Okay, second topic, genders for caregivers. Now, there was an interesting article that was published by somebody who actually said, when choosing a caregiver for your parent, would you want a male or a female? And then it actually also went on to explain that there is a significant gender gap, and this is a reverse gender gap between men and women in this actual career. And actually, I saw one statistic that said only 16% of care workers were actually male. So if you were hiring a care worker for one of your parents, does gender even come into it? Joe, you want to start?
Sure. So I think it's a natural inclination to have a preference, but I would look at competency more than anything else. Like, who's the best caregiver for that particular person, given the situation, given the needs? I say that because I know that in our house, people have different preferences for even the voice of Siri on the iPhone. Change it to male voices or female voices, so Australian accents, etc. But I think competency should win the day. Who's the best fit rather than gender preference?
Any thoughts on this?
Well, yes, I actually do. I think it depends on the level of care they're getting. If it's moderate care, so to speak, pushing a wheelchair through a park or something, it would make absolutely no difference. But I think for more intimate care, bathing and those kinds of things, I think most people would prefer to have someone of the same gender, the same sex, doing things like that for them. So I think it really depends on the circumstances and also, affordability, all these things. But I agree with you. I think more males need to be better represented in that profession for sure.
And what are your thoughts around how do we attract more males into this profession? Because, with an aging population, the demand is going to be, going through the roof. And we're going to need actually that particular skill set. And it doesn't matter whether it's necessarily filled by gender, but we're going to need really, as Joe mentioned, very competent people. What can we possibly do to help make this much more attractive profession, do you think? Joe, do you have any ideas on that?
Well, I think there'll be a natural pull because so many of the jobs are going to go into healthcare and elder care, just given the demographics. So I think there'll be a natural pull that way. A lot of it's going to come down to making it acceptable, meaning how people talk about those roles that people play and how important it is. And also the role of unpaid caregiving.
Yeah.
That's such a big issue, and it's really so underappreciated. So I think more attention to it on the part of media and others, just in terms of appreciating how valuable it is, paid or unpaid.
Oh, no, very good point. Okay, so our final topic is actually sort of staying in the same gender kind of line of things. There was an article published in the New York Times that highlighted that given the increased longevity for women and the fact that they are often out of the workforce longer due to other commitments, and there's also the financial gap, that maybe women should actually be working longer than men. And often women will actually retire around the same time with their spouses and often they're also actually younger than their spouses. Eileen, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think there's some truth behind this? Do you think that this is something that should be considered?
Well, as a person of retirement age myself, I do understand why women want to retire about the same time as their partners or husbands do, because there's a lot of things that you want to do together, and this time of life is really precious. So I get that. But one of the things that struck me in this article was the ongoing wage gap. I think they mentioned it was about 81 cents per dollar for females to earn what males earn. And back in the 60s, I think it was about 61 cents. So over all these years, we've gained a whole big 20 cents. That's still a very frustrating thing, I think, for a lot of women out there in the workforce. As far as staying in line, I think it's really, again, dependent on your circumstances, your own drive, what kinds of things are important to you. But I don't necessarily have an overall blanket suggestions about staying longer in the workforce if that's not your personal preference.
Yeah. Joe, any thoughts on this?
I have a few things. I actually read the underlined paper because we have the professor mention the article on our podcast next Tuesday. So I've looked at what she's done. But it's great work. First thing is, I agree with what Eileen said about the circumstances will vary, and that's going to drive most things. Secondly, in addition, I think that sometimes if a husband retires, that can drive a wife to return to work. It can make it that much more attractive. Just kidding. But I think the article and the research focus more on the financial aspects of retirement,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a compelling case there. Certainly, all the circumstances that she lays out there seem true. But I think that decision to retire, to work longer or not, includes so many non-financial factors. And I think that they need to be both weighed almost equally sometimes.
No, I agree with both of you. I think that there's so many things that actually roll into the decision around retirement that it can't just be because of one thing or another. There's got to be a number of different factors that are in play and considered. And finances is definitely one, but also, what are you going to do? What are you planning on doing? All of those sort of things also play in as well. And I think they're critical. So, I don't think there is a one size fits all. It's definitely a personal decision and something that needs to be considered by each person as an individual. Okay, well, that wraps up this week. I'd like to thank you both very much for your time. And I hope everybody else is out there is making everyday matter and living their own moving on forward. Thanks, everyone.